If one day Taiwan returns, and China and the United States clashed in the Taiwan Strait as a result, there may be several versions of the result. The United States' ambition to intervene in Taiwan Strait affairs, more and more obvious, an otherwise stable situation. Now it is rattled by the interference of Western countries. Many people have been asking in their hearts, if China embarks on a journey to unify Taiwan, how will the United States respond? In fact, American think tanks have also predicted, in the event of a conflict in the Taiwan Strait, several scenarios may arise. The most likely scenario, maybe neither side is willing to budge. This leads to escalating conflict. Eventually, it turned into all-out war. Former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, a world-renowned international political scientist, once evaluated the current greatest risk of war and nuclear war in the world, not the Russo-Ukrainian war. After all, Ukraine is not suitable for a country. NATO and Europe maintain a distance from Russia. The Russian-Ukrainian conflict escalates. City and war chance squeezed into zero. Kissinger pointed out that, most likely to escalate into a world war, even the risk of war, hidden in the Taiwan Strait. If this leads to an all-out war between the two countries, even a global war, the United States will not be able to shirk its huge responsibility. The United States has intervened in Taiwan Strait affairs that have nothing to do with him. As part of a strategy to contain China, military exercises and external displays of force, just a disguise under the cover of America's aggressive. These actions continue to approach the bottom line of our country. For China, final unity of the country cannot be questioned. We will not budge on this crucial issue. Those hostile forces seeking destruction, you have to pay the price. If the United States persists in following the wrong path to the end, sticking to the Taiwan Strait, then all-out war is to be expected. As the conflict base rises, could escalate into a global war. Even war. We dug into American think tanks and strategy. With the Center for International Studies, CSS analysis, they run complex computer simulations and multiple rounds of deduction to evaluate the possible outcome of this hypothetical war. According to their conclusion, even if the United States were to use all its military might, plus allies that may be mobilized, Taiwan Strait with home court advantage in China, the possibility of a US victory in a total war. X is less than half. Here's the second possible outcome. China and the United States maintain strategic restraint, intentionally avoid escalating the situation. This could lead to limited conflict. In this conflict mode, the two sides may use diplomatic channels to stabilize the situation and prevent the conflict from escalating. From some trends, we can smell the portents of this outcome. For example, America goes to great lengths, trying to weaken our country in the Taiwan Strait, a powerful deterrent of the rocket army. International military analysts have pointed out that the United States has joined hands with its allies in modern times, strive to be in East Asia. Regional construction of the so-called missile defense network. This undoubtedly reveals their fear of our country's rocket force. This includes the one behind Korean business conglomerate, the D system that has been stuck in the Chinese market for a long time. There are also many missile bases deployed by Japan. Naturally, the American base in Guam. Also this strategy, a key node in the layout. The purpose of the US military's move is obvious. It's also working on the Zyson system at sea and the anti-missile system on land, trying to contain our army, the overwhelming power of the rocket force. The US think tank takes this opportunity to express its views. While maintaining strategic conservatism, the key to limited war is, without causing the situation to spiral out of control, let both parties in the conflict feel enough pressure. Make it weigh the strategic pros and cons. Choose to withdraw from the battlefield. It can be seen that the missile forces of China and the United States are undoubtedly in this game, will play a crucial role. The missiles referred to here are conventional weapons, missiles that do not involve carrying and warheads. That's within the realm of total war. Precision-guided weapon. The reason why it quickly became the darling of war powers is that they can reduce non-military casualties and mitigate the risk of increased intensity of war. American think tank asserts, once the missile force confrontation becomes a reality, the United States is facing a tremendous crisis. There are three core reasons for this. our country's rocket army. It's not an exaggeration to say he's number one in the world. Easily lead the world. Remember before, we are one of the few in the world. They have an artillery state. Achievements in this regard, no doubt a king. Let's take a look at the Taiwan Strait Bureau action of the US draft. In fact, they mainly rely on. It's from East Asia, military bases and allied networks. But in the end, their advantage is like the palm of their hand within range of our country's rocket forces. Take Dongfeng 26 as an example. You can call them directly. Guam is a focus of concern for the US military. The US relies on aircraft carrier battle groups. Showcase your power globally. But this is what we saw in the rocket force. It's like a torch. The US Navy's aircraft carrier group, by entering our country's territorial waters, the risks are simply multiplied. Like that supersonic FWB missile. During the period of the East Wind, the West became invincible within a decade. Adversary weapon. Dongfeng 21 is known as the aircraft carrier nemesis. The same is true for the hot British machine 21 that has been fried recently. Make it a headache for the US military to deal with. Although America seems to be on the verge of collapse. They're sharpening their guns. But their inner premonition is still pessimistic. For example, if a limited war breaks out, their odds are really slim. What it boils down to is this. The range of our troops has covered the entire second island chain, and the US military can't handle it at all. A missile offensive on this scale. And finally, most of the US military installations in the Western Pacific. Completely destroyed. It's almost a foregone conclusion. They face a massive missile strike from us, defenseless. This showdown. Ultimately, it could lead to the deployment of US troops in the region. Power authority collapse. If the moment comes when Taiwan returns to the motherland, we have a conflict with the United States in the Taiwan Strait. There are several scenarios that could develop. Here's a third possibility: China and the United States, perhaps displaying the greatest degree of strategic restraint, conscious avoidance of further escalation of conflict. It could explode. Local warfare conducted primarily underwater. American think tanks believe that. This situation is not impossible, because in terms of submarine power, the United States still has a certain advantage at this stage. When considering the lower cost of submarine attachments, the US military is likely to move in this direction. The current US military has 68 ships and powered attacks. Submarines and strategic submarines. They travel at speeds underwater. We have a head start in terms of noise reduction. Although our country has almost 60 submarines, gross tonnage over 160,000 tons. But both quantitatively and technically, still lagging behind the United States. This potential local war, it may have erupted due to a provocation by a US submarine. An underwater battle begins. The think tank also speculates our country may send submarines to contain it for a long time, for the liberation of Treasure Island. Therefore, China and the United States are in the sea. The possibility of war exists. However, this scenario is still a low probability event. It's going to have two different consequences. The United States suffered huge losses in submarine combat, but perhaps an imperfect victory. Or both sides were hit hard in the underwater struggle. Lose-lose. Take this opportunity. Instead, our country can take advantage of the surface force. Complete liberation of Treasure Island to address the threat posed by US submarines. And then, finally, the United States will back down to safeguard their own interests. As a result, China and the United States are not actually at war. In fact, according to various predictions of American think tanks, we can see that many Americans are concerned about whether to intervene in Taiwan Strait affairs, time skepticism, or deny it outright. This is very different from our country's position. The situation in the Taiwan Strait has nothing to do with the United States, but the internal affairs of the motherland. Inevitably unified is even more natural. This is not just talk on paper. American military scholars analyze and point out that the United States' unwarranted intervention in the Taiwan Strait, in fact, it touches on China's core interests. After all, as a major country, I really want to be cornered. The outcome of the war was self-evident. Think about it. The status of Taiwan Island is significant for the United States. Is it really important to have core strength? Maybe not. So on this issue, commitments made by China and the United States The range of costs that can be afforded, not at all on the same level. The United States has long realized this truth. Therefore, after looking at a series of weapon simulations, many American lawmakers and scholars began to speak out, stop interfering in Taiwan Strait affairs. In fact, it's not good for America. The nature of America. In a folk proverb, it's a double dealing, or if it's nice to say efficient and practical, act for profit. What are Americans doing at high risk? Low return activities are impossible. If the strategic misjudgment of the situation in Taiwan, endangering their core interests, then the American think tank will also predict the possibility of U.S. military intervention in the Taiwan Strait. It's actually very low, as China's military power continues to increase. This possibility will only get smaller.